Hello, everybody. My name is Angelo Webb, and welcome to the Multifamily Man Podcast, powered by Total Wealth Academy. And today I'm going to talk about D and F properties. I don't like using those terms, but those are the terms of the industry, and that's really the only way you can communicate with people when you're talking about certain classes of assets. You usually don't hear people say F. You usually hear them say war zone, which isn't any better. But me myself, I started in what some would consider probably a D property, possibly some would consider a war zone property. So that's where I kind of sharpen my teeth in the industry. I would never invest in one, just keeping it real, unless the opportunity was just ridiculous. But, we always suggest people to try to stay in the C plus to B plus neighborhood, or maybe C to B plus assets and C to B plus neighborhoods, just because they're a little bit stable. As far as the community itself, the area itself, the residents tend to be a little bit more stable. They have different types of jobs. Not a lot of people working in the service industry. A little bit more secure employment, especially once you get to B or higher. That's when you start to see many self-employed, which, again, is twofold. Depending on how you look at it, some people say that's less stability. But typically you have a higher income, more consistent income. So D and war zone properties, I usually don't advise too many people to get into, and as well, because once you get into that class of asset, it's more of cash flow. And those are going to be your cash cows, no doubt. Like, no questions asked, that's where the cash cows are in that asset. But depending on your goal, again, what we teach people about, and what we do is about appreciation and some cash flow, right? So the cash flow may not be, knock you out of your chair, but you do have cash flow. But the appreciation after you implement your value add plays or repositioning, depending on what you have going on at the property, that's really where the big money is and the big return is. So that's typically why I wouldn't. But some people are kind of dead set on D class and war zone properties. So today I just want to talk about, I might break this up into two, I'm not sure, but just a few things on if you're going to buy that asset in that class. Some things to help you be successful. You definitely cannot look at it like a C property or a B property. Definitely not an A property. You have to understand the demographic is different. And when I say demographic, I mean socio-economic demographic. And really, it just comes down to the social and economic reality for the clientele and your residents and people in those communities. That's all it comes down to. So my first tip, and this is kind of I don't know if I should be sharing it. This is like OG tip, you know what I'm saying? Like, but it's like a secret. A lot of people do this, but it's really trying to lease the whole building to some kind of government agency, some kind of housing program, some kind of community development program, or something like that. And why that is so powerful is if you have 24 units, 48 units, whatever you have, if you have one entity that will lease the whole thing, that takes a lot of work off your plate, right? Like they still have to you still have to manage it, right? And run the place and make sure people are following the rules. So there's still management involved, but the leasing, the collecting of rent, the evicting, all that crap that comes with the territory. And typically you do more of in those two classes. You kind of eliminate that, right? And that makes it a lot easier. And even I've seen in some cases where I've seen smaller apartments, maybe 16 units, where people have actually done a triple net lease on a residential building, on a residential commercial building. They've done a triple net lease with the VA. A lot of people don't know the VA has a program similar to Section 8. They did a triple net with the VA. So the VA rented the whole building, right? And the owner of that building, and what triple net means, guys, for people who aren't familiar with that term, the owner of the building is literally responsible for nothing, absolutely nothing, not the maintenance. The tenant pays the taxes. The tenant has to pay the insurance, all of that stuff. So you see that a lot if you see a Walgreens does not own that building. There's a developer who developed that building for Walgreens, sorry. And Walgreens is on a triple net lease. Same thing you see with fast food restaurants, a lot of single standing buildings, usually a triple net lease. Or when you look at the shopping centers, especially big ones where you have your anchor stores, triple net lease. Somebody, again, this individual, he took that concept and put it to the residential building. And I believe for that 16 unit building, he was getting like $15,000 a month. And that's the NOI, right? Because there literally are no expenses. So this dude was making like $180,000 NOI off of a building that, if he would have ran in that area, if he would have ran them or managed them as your typical apartment, they were all 1 bedroom, 1 baths. He probably would have only gotten like $425 a pop. So, and then you still got to consider expenses. So when you do the math on that, I mean, just in my head real quick, maybe revenues of like $7,000. Revenues about $7,000 a month, and then you take out expenses, maybe like $3,500 before debt service. So it's the difference between like $3,500 a month and $15,000 a month. I mean, it's a huge difference, right? It's damn near 5 times more, all because he made a great decision and made a really smart play on that, right? So that's one tip. Well, that's the first tip. If you can rent the whole building, the whole property to some kind of government agency or any kind of organization, and it could be different organizations. Like I've seen this also done. There's AIDS organizations. There's homeless teens organizations. There's all these different type of organizations that you can find. All right. The second tip, and that's just like, again, that's the first one. Some people might be mad that I put it out there because that's like a lot of people's little secret to their success. But in my opinion, we shouldn't be hiding secrets from people. And even if in the need to go down a rabbit hole here, the need for stuff like that is so high, even if everybody did it, it still would not be enough. So there's no reason to keep a secret. And if you're a truly successful person, there's nothing to keep secret because you have confidence and you believe in yourself and your ability to stay successful. Okay. So, but the second tip, so if you're going to just run this like a normal, like a kind of classic, typical apartments, the most important thing is tenant screening. And that's at every asset, A, B, C, D, war zone, etc. Tenant screening is everything. You have to screen. Like, if you can get away with it in the A class, B class sometimes, but once you get to C, D, proper screening and staying consistent with the proper screening, Not making exceptions because of sob stories and not to be insensitive, but that's going to eliminate 80% of the issues. Is good screening, guys. They're good tenants. They're good residents. In every socio-economic demographic, it's about screening and finding them. If you get desperate and they're close enough, that's when problems start to go down, right? You have standards for your applicants for a reason, and you just have to stick to those. I would say a lot of those things are, excuse me. The biggest thing is no recent evictions. That's one big thing. Like, if they were recently evicted, because you'll be surprised, especially if anybody's been in this industry at least 6 months, if you're listening to this, wanting to get into it, you will be surprised at how many people will call you and be like, well, yeah, my landlord's evicting me. Can I apply there? What? Like, you're getting evicted. Why would you apply here? Right? Like, why would I accept it? Right? So that's just kind of some basic stuff for the screening. I mean, that's a basic one for screening. But you just have to figure out and know what are our qualification requirements, and you stick to them. Might get flagged for this one too, but no violent felonies. Like, I know people can turn their rifles around and like stuff like that. My opinion, if you want to not have that as a requirement, it's probably better for a smaller property, and that can just be the norm, and that can be kind of your go-to, And I would reach out, if somebody says, hey, I want to provide housing for felons, people who may have made mistakes in the past. They pay their debt to society. We want to help them, show that they've changed, etc. Reach out to, people who own and operate halfway houses. Reach out to probation officers and all that kind of stuff, and let them know, like, hey, I have this property where we do accept felons. We do accept people with violent felonies, and that could be a niche. There's a guy in Georgia, like, he has a trailer, mobile home park, and like 80% of it is cut that out. I don't want to put that one in there, Lucas. Never mind. Boy, I'm on one today. But yeah, that could be a possible niche for people. Like, hey, yeah, we do rent to people with felonies or violent felons that are, again, people do turn their life around, and if me personally, I believe that they do deserve a chance. But I think if you're gonna do it, make it specific properties. Don't do it across the board. Just because it can lead into other problems with other tenants. And some people will look at the qualifications and say, well, you accept, I don't see this on here, because a lot of other places will have that clearly stated in the qualifications: no violent felonies or no felonies in the last 5 years, 7 years, etc. And they'll be like, oh, well, I don't want to live here. Right. So I think that would just be smart to get a smaller property, or have a smaller property where you do allow it, so you do still have the option for people, and if somebody comes to one of your bigger properties and they say, you screen them, or they say, well, yeah, I got an armed robbery, or I did, a violent crime, like, hey, based off of that, you wouldn't qualify here with us, but we do have another property close by, or we do have another property over here where we do accept people who, have the violent felonies or felonies in the past. But again, the second tip is screening. Screening is everything. And yes, call the old landlords. People stop doing this in the industry. Well, I would say about half the companies that I've talked to and people who work in the industry say that they don't do that anymore. It says old school and outdated. Sometimes old school stuff works. It's worked all that time. for a reason. Always do the rental verifications. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. And then you have to judge based off of the feel that you get from the previous landlord or current landlord, if it's the truth or not. Some of them will tell you, oh my God, they're great. Sad to see them go, but I understand, blah, 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 blah. And they're saying that because they're the tenants from hell and they want to get them the fuck out their property. So, and then you have the other ones who are mad that they're leaving because they can always count on them and they're not happy that they're leaving. It might be some kind of small disagreement that led them to leave, or they're just leaving and they might be spiteful. Oh, they're horrible. The place is trash. They never pay rent on time. So you do have to consider it, but you have to make that judgment and go with your gut based off of what they tell you and just take that into consideration. But I always call a lot of people going to put on there fake people. Put the homie on there, And I know somebody laughing because I know y'all have done that for jobs. Put your best friend down there as your boss. Oh, yeah, they're a great worker. The best we've ever had. But people do it for people do it for their apartments as well. So you definitely want to call and verify. And when you call and verify, look up on the tax records the address that they say they're living at. Look up the tax records. Just go to your local city, local county, and look up the address, and they'll show you who the owners are. So if they have the owners on there, his name is John Smith, and then you look and it's their mama, like, okay, that's a red flag, right? And then stuff like that is the kind of stuff you have to look for, keep an eye out for, and that shows you that there's some deception there. And those are the type of residents that you do not want at your property, right? You want the cream of the crop. The third tip, if you can't get the whole property, leased by a government agency or something like that, get it qualified for Section 8. Section 8 gets a really bad rap. First of all, it's not hard to qualify for Section 8. A lot of people say, oh, you got to do so much. If your property does not qualify for Section 8 the way you're running it as is, you might be a slumlord. What was that? The comedian? You might be a redneck if. You might be a slumlord if your property does not qualify for Section 8 by the way you're running it. If you're complaining that you're going to have to do more stuff to qualify for Section 8, you're not doing a good job. I'm just keeping it real, being honest. You're not doing a good job at all. Because it's not hard to qualify for Section 8. And there's a big misconception about tenants who are on Section 8. Even with Section 8, you still have to screen them. Like, you can't just anybody come in with a voucher. Okay, I'm not gonna do the screening. They got a voucher. No, you still have to take them through that process, and they may not qualify. And if they don't qualify, they don't qualify. But you still have to screen. You still have to use your common sense. What I have found, the downside that some people have with Section 8 or any other program like that, you have rapid rehousing, you have all kind of programs through the state and local governments, is the paperwork. Again, I sharpen my teeth in the LIHTC side of things. So, one applicant for us ended up being anywhere from 80 to 100 sheets of pages just for a normal move-in, right? The first time I was at a market property, I'm like, damn, that's it. Like this file's 12 pages. Like, I'm missing something, right? And if you're used to doing that, and then you get somebody with Section 8 or a similar program, and the paperwork that's required is significantly more, right? And some people, that's a huge turnoff. And that's understandable. But the misconception that people on Section 8 are going to destroy the property, people on Section 8 are going to bring the property down, it's all false. And that's from my direct experience. This isn't from me reading some rainbows and butterflies news reports and books and people demonizing landlords and stuff like that. No, it's just from my experience. You know what I'm saying? My years of experience on site and in corporate as a regional. Section 8 properties and Section 8 residents do not give you the headaches, right? If I had to pick my 5 best residents ever, 4 of them are on Section 8, right? So, and then understand too, if you ever have issue with somebody on Section 8, my thing that I always did and what I train my team to do is there's a sheet, right, that basically tells them when they qualify for Section 8, they tell them at the Section 8 office, but sometimes they forget because it could be years before they actually get an apartment. It lets them know, like, if you get evicted, if you don't pay your portion, if you do property damage and all that, you'll lose your voucher. I slide that in there with the paperwork and just let them know, like, hey, this is just, this sheet is from Section 8. This reminder says if you can lose your voucher if X, Y, Z, right? A, B, C, X, Y, Z. We just exclude this and well, just to remind people and just move past it. And a lot of them be like, damn, because they don't want to lose that voucher. Like, that voucher is everything. Like, that voucher is the difference between being homeless for probably 60% of them to going to live with people that they don't want to live with for the other 40. So that's just a reminder that I've always used, and I've never had issues. My worst tenants have been in my A properties and A+ properties because of the entitlement, right? The do you know who I am syndrome and all that kind of crap. It's like, I don't care who you are. The lease says that you can't bump your music at midnight. Right? Like, so my nightmare tenant, my 5 worst tenants, all 5 of them came from A properties. Just keeping it real. They always pay their rent on time, but it was the behavior that was the issue. Actually, one of them, it usually is the behavior with the A properties. It's not the rent, right? It's just the entitlement. We've had a couple of A, oh my God, Lucas, cut this whole thing out cut it out from my best tenants, or my worst tenants were A. All right, so I'll go back into it. But yeah, so Section 8 is not the nightmare that people claim it to be. It is a lot of paperwork. Hire a good accountant, pay them to do it, save yourself some time, but make yourself some money. Got it? So number 4, my 4th tip, and this is something that it's kind of common sense, but people don't do. Lots of lighting and lots of cameras, and make sure that the lighting and the cameras are over 18 feet. Ideally 25 feet, because people can, it's easy for people to mess with the lights if they're 10 feet, 12 feet, the cameras if they're 10 feet, 12 feet. Put cameras all over the property, and make sure that you have a lot of lighting. There's 2 things criminals love: not being filmed and darkness, right? In one of our properties, we installed one of the boxes with cameras on them. Unbeknownst to the residents and the surrounding people, it was fake. And so we had a box, fake cameras, and it had a little light on it. And it mimicked the ones that you would see that the police department has on the light poles, or the stoplights. And it even came with a sticker that looked exactly like the one that the police use, right? So they see that and they're like, oh, hell. I think in a matter of like 3 days, all the drug dealers were gone. And the property turned around pretty quickly because we didn't have a criminal element there anymore. Then we installed, in addition to that, over like a 3-month period, we installed lights all around the property, and we put cages, double cages over them. It's really cool. Somebody could shoot a light out with a BB gun, right? So with the double cages, they're so tight that the light still gets through great, but no foreign objects can come in and bust it out, right? Because again, if you put them too low, they'll bust them out. They'll spray paint over them. They'll do all kind of stuff. But if you do these things, you just make it inconvenient for them to do the illegal things that they're doing. And it's human nature. People go with the path of least resistance. If they know they got to do all of that just to do their dirt and do what's illegal, they're going to go find the other place where it's easier to do. So that's a great way, and that's also a great feature in those type of neighborhoods, and to let people know, hey, we have cameras, right? We have surveillance cameras. We can see every inch of the community. They're always recording. We have lights, so it's well lit at night. That's a selling feature. That's a rental feature. That, for a lot of people in those type of neighborhoods, safety is a big concern. Just simply because we know poverty leads to crime, right? And in those neighborhoods, poverty is rampant, right? It's real. It's the reality for them. It's poverty. So is crime. So if they can live somewhere where they feel safer, it's a huge, huge leasing point. And the fifth point, we've done this before, and it's pretty effective, but if people can send you pictures or videos to people who are breaking community rules, if there's people vandalizing, if there's drug activity, prostitution, yes, prostitution happens at some of these properties, all of that, all of those bad elements of what can happen in places where there's a lot of poverty, people bring you evidence and show you who it is or tell you who it is, but they have to prove it. They can't just say, hey, it's man, my dude in 202, probably selling drugs, a lady 301, I think she's a prostitute. If they got pictures, they got video, give them $100 Visa gift card. Just saying. A lot of people like, well, you're bribing them? Yeah. What do you think moving specials are? Bribes. Right? So yeah, bribing them to let you know who the problem tenants are, who the problem people are on the property, and get them off so that the asset doesn't have that negative element and people can live their life happily. So what I'm going to do for time's sake is I'm actually going to break this up because I have 5 more. I'm just going to break this up and do a part 2. So thank you for listening. I think this one a little bit longer than the other ones, but I appreciate you guys for listening. If you have any questions, I can be reached at Angelo@gettotalwealth.com. And again, my name is Angelo Webb, and this is the Multifamily Man Podcast, powered by Total Wealth Academy. Thank you.